I'll hit that recording. And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar titled ITIL in a World of Digital Transformation. I'd like to introduce our featured presenter today. His name is Akshay Anand. He is a product ambassador for IT service management at Axelos, working on the development of new guidance and research within the ITSM portfolio. He previously advised Fortune 100 clients on how to improve their ITSM capabilities, implemented tool sets such as Remedy and ServiceNow, and headed up global ITSM activities at Macmillan Publishing. More recently, Akshay has focused on bringing together agile development teams and ITSM professionals to address challenges posed by emerging technologies and market shifts, and has occasionally been spotted tweeting as at Floorboy. All right, Akshay, you can go ahead and have the floor now.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for making the time to listen to me today. The topic at hand is something that I'm very interested in. It's something that I've been researching and inputting into the ITIL update, which is something I'll also be talking about. We're very interested in what's happening in the space of digital transformation and how it's being interpreted and executed in different ways. And the folks at New Horizons approached me to say, we'd like you to talk about how ITIL fits into digital transformation, how IT service management fits into it. And I was delighted, honored to be here, and yes, let's get started. So briefly, what we'll be talking about today is trying to put some definition around the phrase digital transformation, and then see how companies are reacting or how they're going about accomplishing a digital transformation, and then segueing into what that means for IT service management professionals. But first, introductions. That's my mugshot over there. ITSM product ambassador. I've been at Axelos for about a year and a half. Axelos, for those who don't know, is a joint venture between Capita and Her Majesty's government here in the UK, which allowed Her Majesty's government to hand off the development of ITIL as well as Prince2 and a few other products to a public-private partnership type enterprise, i.e. Axelos. I've been here for about a year and a half, been working on many different things, but most of my focus of late has been the ITIL update. And I'm a huge fan of Superman and 80s heavy metal. If any of you ever meet up with me, we can talk about whether David Lee Roth is a better vocalist than Sammy Hagar, and I will arm wrestle you if you have the wrong answer for that. Just a quick disclaimer, a lot of the pictures and images I've used were sourced from various public sources. I don't have copyright. I'm just using Creative Commons my use of these images. So let's start off by talking about what is digital transformation. It's something that I actually recorded a podcast about a year and a half ago, where somebody even suggested in that panel that digital transformation was another rebranding of what others people call enterprise service management. So it's about extending service management capabilities or service mindset outside of IT and looking at the whole business or the whole organization as a service provider. Regardless of what your specific definition might be, what I've observed is that the phrase digital transformation and people's interpretations very much appear to be in line with the story of the 7 blind men or 6 blind men, depending on your story, who are examining different parts of the elephant and making predictions about what an elephant looks like based on very limited sensory input about what they're specifically feeling. So everybody has different definitions, but there are some broad themes that I can point to. Before we get to that, there's another question, which is, regardless of what your definition of digital transformation might be, does digital transformation actually succeed in achieving its aims? And I did a bit of desk research about this to see what sort of facts, figures, or case studies I might be able to put. So there was an article on CIO a couple of months ago which said, yes, digital transformation succeeds. Here's some of the companies it succeeded at. Um, and I picked American companies for the audience here, but we've got USCIS and Mark Schwartz, who's now at AWS, who is responsible for a lot of good work that happened over there. But JetBlue, Domino's, Walmart, Capital One, and so on, all talk about their digital transformation success. But equally, there was an article in Harvard Business Review 2 months ago that talked about how digital transformation initiatives and some pretty big and well-known names there, GE, Nike, Procter & Gamble, Ford, had all failed to the extent that their CIOs or the head of the digital transformation essentially had to exit the company as well. So I think the jury is out, and I think that comes down to differing definitions of what digital transformation is and what it's trying to accomplish. But as I said, I think there are some common themes, and let's explore that a bit. What is digital transformation when you get right down to it? And broadly, it could be transforming customer experience, so better engagement through mobile and social media channels that allows organizations to learn more about their customers' use of their product services and invest more time improving specific features or functionality that are being used, trimming away things that aren't being used. And this is certainly a very good definition of digital transformation. Another definition I've come across is transforming the back-end infrastructure. So it's about focusing on what's automatable, what's repeatable business or IT processes, and automating them away. It's about managing the variability of how value is being delivered to customers, to employees, to suppliers, to regulators. Or it could be an end-to-end transformation where you bring together both the front end and back end. So your customer might be seeing better engagement through various channels. Your organization might be learning more about your customers and how they're interacting and using your products and services, which requires you, therefore, to focus on automating away repeatable processes and managing variability of demand. But very few people or organizations are thinking in this holistic way. They're looking at a very specific piece of the elephant, if you will, and then focusing their efforts on a very narrow subset of activities rather than thinking holistically. So, what is digital transformation? I found two very nice phrases that talks about that can define what we've just talked about. The first is the digitalization. Personally, I hate that word, but it's the digitalization of the customer experience. So the customer touch point away from phone-based channels or paper-based channels to apps and social media, from which you can derive good analytics. It might be the use of, I know I have cloud there, but I had cloud to because it's usually talked of in the context of social and mobile and analytics, the SMAC acronym. But it's the digitalization of that customer experience that in turn reconfigures the organization's infrastructure and resources to support that better customer experience. The other word that I've found used in this context is digitization, and that's specifically the digitization of the organization's resources, which in turn enables a better customer experience. So here we're talking about automating business and IT processes, moving away from paper-based records or single databases to distributed databases, distributed computing, to allow for better reliability, maintainability, and scalability of IT platforms and services. And that in turn provides a better customer experience. But the focus isn't on the customer experience, the focus is on the actual back end. Or it could be, and this is my premise, digital transformation is actually a combination of digitalization and digitization. You can't do one and ignore the other. You have to do both in parallel, which allows you to think holistically. It allows you to think end to end, and it allows you to deliver better agility because you're only working on the things that matter from an end-to-end perspective. So taking all this together, we can derive some common themes of what it means to undergo digital transformation. The first is speed, or accelerating to the right speed. It's not speed for speed's sake, but it's the right speed. The right speed to deliver new functionality, to recover from outages, so to be more robust, more resilient, to respond to market shifts, and the right speed at which your business conducts its operations. I really like the metaphor of the gear mesh that you see on the right-hand side. The whole system is moving together, but they're moving at different speeds, and that speed is dictated by how large the gear is. But in a business context, the business, the IT, the infrastructure, the applications, they're all moving together. Some are moving faster than others, and that's absolutely fine. The next theme is about managing value, outcomes, costs, and risks, which, if anyone remembers their ITIL foundation, is your standard definition of a service. So you're delivering value through services, and that's not just customer value. It's some value is going to be retained by your organization because it's deriving revenues, it's promoting customer experience, but also employee morale and happiness and so on. There's value to your partners and suppliers because they're able to fulfill their contracts and get paid for it. There's value to government regulators or other trade agencies because you're showing that you're able to work within the boundaries that they have set. So not just about customer value, but it's value to the entire ecosystem. And that value is generated through services. One of the things we've been looking at of late is service science and service dominant logic. There's a lot of really good stuff about co-creation of value that's come out of some of that research. So although a lot of your focus as service management professionals is about delivering that value, you still need to keep an eye on your traditional measurements of efficiency, effectiveness, costs, risks. Ultimately, you're balancing the speed, which we talked about on the previous slide, with risks to your organization, to your customers. And the third one is you're putting customers first. You're delivering a modern user experience. So you're moving away from clunky window interfaces to app interfaces, for example. But beyond that, there's also a move to an end-to-end customer experience, mapping the customer's journey through the product, through the service, from the point where they enter to the point where they exit, or at the point where they move back into an ongoing value delivery phase. But it's about the end-to-end customer experience. It's not just about updating the user interfaces. So putting all that together, transformation, I would posit that teams need to operate and learn through feedback at the appropriate speed for what it is they're doing. You wouldn't expect an organizational strategy to change multiple times a day, for example. They need to be able to manage their value proposition along with the outcomes that they're delivering, the costs and risks that they're incurring or being exposed to. And teams need to be able to orient their services to be customer-centric. And that's all great, but where does ITIL come in? So ITIL, as we all know, provides best practice guidance. It's always been the starter for 10. It's always been stuff that needs to be adapted and adopted. The guidance exists to guide organizations. It does not exist to compel you to do things in a very prescribed way. You have to adapt and adopt, as I said, but you have to do it at the right level of granularity. There are times where you have to be very, very prescriptive, and there are times where you can be as non-prescriptive, outcome-driven, and not too focused on the specific procedures and processes that need to be followed. And both can coexist side by side. This is the whole area of bimodal or multimodal IT. The right level of granularity to put it another way, different levels of granularity require different ways of adapting the guidance and before adopting it. which means you need to identify the goal or objective of each process area and put in place mechanisms to achieve the goal or the objective rather than following what it says on page 432 of service operations, because the books and the guidance are all about uh, the basic things that need to happen, not a prescriptive implementation guide to achieve these goals and objectives. At the end of the day, ITIL and the guidance that we put into ITIL is there to help you change the way in which you design and operate services, for all the way from planning the service to improving and ultimately retiring that service. It's there to help you communicate and manage stakeholders of different stakeholder groups. I mentioned some of these before. It's not just about the customers, it's also about the organization and the people in the service provider organization working day in and day out to deliver these services. It's about the suppliers and partners that you work with in your ecosystem. It's about the auditors and government agencies to whom you report. It's about your shareholders and investors if you're a publicly traded company. So there are multiple stakeholders with different expectations, and ITIL helps you figure out how to communicate and manage expectations for these different stakeholder groups. Um, ITIL also gives you a solid foundation or bedrock to help you understand what you need to measure and what you need to improve. It doesn't tell you what to measure and what to improve. And in fact, one of the anti-patterns, if I can use that phrase, of the guidance has been that people will look at today's published guidance and say, page 452 of service operations, it says KPIs for incident management are this, and this, and they take that to be the gospel truth. It's not meant to be the gospel truth. The guidance actually says these are example KPIs. You have to adapt and adopt the guidance to fit your context. So you need to also understand what you need to measure and what you need to improve. And those things can change, and that's absolutely fine as well. Because you need to focus on continual improvement. When people ask me, what's the most important process or capability or piece of guidance that uh, ITIL can offer today's enterprises, and especially what ITIL can offer organizations going about digital transformation, for me, it's continual improvement. It's continual improvement focus to help you change for the better how your people behave, how your processes are executed, how you manage your services, how you manage your customers, how you manage all the other stakeholders. Now, interesting webinar, and throw it out there. A lot of people came back with service portfolio and business relationship management. And those are absolutely, they're not mapped to, if they can't map to your organizational objectives, you need to take a look at how you plan to roll out new services to replace the existing services in your portfolio so you can align with your business objectives. And business relationship management is a key critical capability to help translate your business requirements and vision and strategy into specific tactical and operational requirements for your IT organization. A good business relationship management function will elevate IT from being an order taker to a strategic partner. And let's face it, with digital transformation, where the walls between the business, quote unquote, and IT, quote unquote, up to where business relationship management plays a crucial role. But my answer to that same question is what's the most important piece of guidance for digital transformation objectives? For me, that's continual improvement. Because continual improvement can happen anywhere in this organizational construct. It's not limited to just processes. It can be anything. And if you start off with a focus on identifying things that need to change and working through a backlog of things that need to change, and a backlog, by the way, that gets reprioritized based on business objectives, you will be a lot better off than focusing on singular processes. And key to that continual improvement program is understanding that not all areas of the organization can or should work the same way. Yes, it would be lovely if your finance teams can adjust budgets on a 2-week sprint basis, but that's not going to happen. Finance, for example, will work at a specific cadence. It's not the same cadence, nor should it be the same cadence as software basis, uh, but which will run at different cadences, and that's absolutely fine. In fact, you should embrace that rather than fighting against that. Another quote to throw in there. I'm not a massive fan of Star Trek Discovery, I have to say, but I really love this quote. Universal laws for lackeys, context is for kings. And that kind of, for me, sums up a lot of the appeal of ITIL as well as the misuse of ITIL that I've seen. ITIL is not a universal law. It's about recognizing context and applying context to decisions that need to be made. By the way, if you ever do meet up with me, I'm also open to any debates about Star Trek versus Star Wars. So, with all that in mind, I want to very specifically draw your attention to ITIL practitioner. It's been my experience that not a lot of people know about ITIL practitioner, but those who have been through the training or the certification, or even just read the book, speak in hold it in very high regard and speak very fondly about the guidance that's written there. And I truly believe that ITIL practitioner should be positioned front and center in enabling digital transformation, because it talks about topics like organizational change management, communication and stakeholder management, designing good metrics, continual improvement. It also talks about the guiding principles, which I'll come to in a moment. In essence, ITIL practitioner talks about everything but the processes. It talks about all the other things that need to happen at the same time in order to deliver value through IT service management. And I cannot recommend it highly enough. I mentioned the guiding principles. We sometimes refer to them as a culture for success. This is also described at some length in ITIL practitioner. There are 9 principles which have been defined in this publication. Focus on value. I think everything that we do in IT services and IT service management has to be focused on delivering value. If a particular activity or process or service is not delivering value, then we should not be expending resources in executing or delivering that service. This is a concept that resonates very deeply with lean practitioners. Focus on value. The second, design for experience. That's not just customer experience, it's experience of any stakeholder in this ecosystem. The experience that they have with your service or your service management organization has to provide a good experience. It's not just about value, although you could argue that value is derived from a good experience, but you need to make sure that when you're designing your processes or the forms that people have to fill out or the way you're reporting to people, you need to design them so that the consumers of that process or that report or activity have a good experience. Start where you are is also a very important one. This is this guiding principle essentially advises you to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, I've been an ITIL or service management consultant for a very long time, and a very typical thing that a lot of consultants will do is to say, right, let's imagine a greenfield situation, or let's imagine, if we could build something that we want to do, what can we build? But that's not the way real life works. Real life essentially requires you to take a look at what's already in place, identify what is valuable out of the things that are already in place and what needs to be replaced, and then focus your efforts on replacing the things that aren't working. You're starting where you are and you're recognizing value from what you're already doing. It might be very little value from what you're already doing, but you're at least recognizing that, hey, I'm at least logging my incidents in my ticketing platform, right? It might not be a great experience. It might not be delivering that much value, but it is something that's mildly beneficial. So start where you are, continue to do that. Work holistically. Now, this is about looking at the end, not only the end-to-end process or service experience, but it's about recognizing all the stakeholders in the environment and working to make sure that the needs of all these stakeholders are taken into account or are being met to the best possible extent. It's not about working in silos. For those of you who've read books like The Goal, you'll know that local optimization of processes is very dangerous. You need to you need to think globally but act locally. Progress iteratively. This is something that, of course, comes from the agile world and resonates very much with agile practitioners. It's about progressing in small steps rather than big bang approaches. One place where where I've seen a lot of tension or failed projects is because these transformational projects are being planned as large chunks of work with a fixed end goal in mind and fixed paths to get to that end goal. By progressing iteratively, you're able to measure the impact of small changes on your organization, on your customers, and it allows you to adjust your approaches and your planning to better accommodate emerging needs from within your organization or outside of your organization. For those of you who know about the Cynefin construct or the Cynefin framework or complexity in organizations, this is something that comes out of that domain or area of thinking. It's about complex adaptive systems and knowing that actions in a complex system change the system itself. So there's no point in trying to create fixed linear paths to get to an end goal. You have to iterate your way to that end goal. The next one, observe directly, also comes to an extent from that thinking and the literature around complexity and complexity theory. It's about saying that if you are reading data that somebody else has interpreted for you, then you will be reading their biased interpretations. It's better to go down to the coalface and observe directly. Look at how people are using your service or following your service management processes. Don't rely on reports, don't rely on secondhand accounts to make your decisions. I'll give you a fantastic case. When I rolled out a self-service portal, which also allowed IT professionals to raise change requests at Macmillan. Initially, I was relying on reports to tell me how many changes were being raised, what was the percentage failure of changes, and so on and so forth. But that wasn't telling me what I needed to know. What I needed to know could only be gleaned by going into these IT teams and almost literally sitting next to them and observing them when they were filling out this form to say, well, why aren't you filling that piece of information? Or why aren't you looking up that piece of information from a table? Or why aren't you filling this out and only bunching up your changes so you have to fill out one form? What's the experience that you're getting out of the system? I could only get that information if I'd observed directly. The reports wouldn't have told me that. Moving swiftly on, simple. I think this goes without saying, don't needlessly complicate things. Don't needlessly put in wasteful efforts if they're not needed. It might be really nice to capture every single piece of information on a change record, but let's face it, you only really need what's going to change, who's going to change it, when are they going to make a change, and what are they changing. That's really all you need. You don't need 30 fields to capture that. Sure, 4 fields is a bit simplistic, but you don't need to go overboard either. Keep it simple. Collaborate. When you're designing services or service management processes. Collaborate with all the stakeholders in your ecosystem to make sure that their requirements are being met, that their experience is going to be a pleasurable one. Don't do these activities in a silo and then expect people to think the way you think and follow the way you would expect them to use a system. All too often, I've found, especially developers, although I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but I found a lot of developers or highly intelligent people, as we all are, thinking that people will act the same way as we think and act. And this ultimately leads to failed systems and failed transformations. And last but certainly not least, be transparent. Make sure everybody knows what decisions are being made, why they're being made, because then they can feel like they've been a part of it. They can feel that you're being collaborative, you're focused on value, you're working holistically, you're observing directly, so on and so forth. Be transparent. Take people along a journey. Don't shut them out. And on a final note, as some of you may know, ITIL is being updated. I'm part of the lead architecture team working on that currently. There's not too many details I can divulge at this time, but I really do look forward to sharing with you all the wonderful stuff we're thinking about and writing about as well. But if you are involved in a digital transformation initiative, I would love to hear from you, and I would love to involve you in the update. Here's a chance to contribute to the body of knowledge, and the contribution can take many different shapes. You could be write a blog post on axilos.com. You could be publishing a paper or a case study in your name, and we will promote that for you. It's not about Axilos taking your stuff and just slapping an Axilos sticker on it. We want to promote your thinking. So if you're involved in a digital transformation initiative, we would love to hear from you. We would love to help you develop a case study, promote your brand of thinking, help you develop a blog post or a white paper, or maybe even get you on a podcast so we can talk to you about your experience and how ITIL has helped or even hindered you. Beyond that, for other aspects of the update, we're always looking for people who can either review materials that somebody else has written, who can contribute materials, who can perhaps even test at the new exam. We're looking for any trainers among you who might want to be part of any train-the-trainer programs that we run. We're always looking for subject matter experts who can advise us and help us with some of our research as well. There's a link on the slide now, axilos.com/ITIL-research, where you can go to sign up and register yourself to get some updates and newsletters when we publish them once a month to tell you what we've been working on. If you're interested in signing an NDA and getting a bit under the covers into the development process to be able to review the work or contribute some case studies that directly link to the update, then please email me. My email address is on that slide, and I'm sure the fine folks at New Horizons will make this slide deck publicly available. Please do email me. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, as we all mentioned earlier. Get in touch is all I'm asking. And that's it. That was quick, short, and sweet. I hope this has been of interest. Thank you for your time, and over to questions.
All right, Akshay, thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions, we'll remain on the line for a few more minutes to answer those over audio. Also want to remind you all that I did record this webinar session, and you'll receive a link to view the session recording for anything you may have missed, or if you'd like to share it with any of your colleagues, you can pass that along as well. I will also provide you with the slide deck as well. And if you're interested in any more information on our available ITIL course or certification offerings through New Horizons, please visit our website at newhorizons.com. You can click on the courses and certifications, and it will be listed under our technical courses. So if you're interested in more information on that, feel free to go there as well. All right, it looks like we do not have any questions, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up today's session. Thank you so much, Akshay, for presenting on behalf of New Horizons and Axilos. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for giving me a little bit of time to hear me talk about this topic.
All right, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. That'll conclude today's session. You may now log off. Have a great day.